Okay, hello everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for coming, and a good holiday to all of you. I want to thank Senators Murray and Reid, and Senator Murphy is in the negotiations, but he's going to join us for a few minutes. Okay, we just had a great lunch, obviously a lot to talk about. The bottom line, both Democrats and Republicans understand that there's more work to do to pass legislation protecting America's security and the security of the Western world. This week, we made important progress, with a special thanks to Senators Murphy and Sinema for their dogged work with Senator Lankford. Negotiations aren't easy. We know it's going to take more time, but I am significantly more optimistic today than I was Thursday when we left, based on the negotiations that have occurred all weekend. We have only one option. We have to succeed. The stakes are too high for America, for Europe, for the Middle East, for the world. We have to send more aid to Ukraine to defeat Putin. We know how. This is a historic moment, as I have said. History will look back if we don't support our ally in Ukraine and regard it as a major negative turning point for the U.S. and the Western world. We know how important that is. We also know that Republicans and Democrats have to continue our negotiation on the border. We have to send aid to Israel. We have to send critical aid to humanitarian aid to innocent civilians in Gaza. As the past few weeks have been clear, Democrats have been willing to engage in good faith, realistic negotiations about border security. We agree the border must be fixed. That is a broad consensus in our caucus. Finding common ground, of course, is difficult, one of the most difficult issues Congress has faced. This has been an intractable issue. The last major bipartisan effort on immigration occurred when Senator McCain and I led the Gang of Eight back in 2013. So I know how hard it is. But the details in this matter immensely, because this is not a topic that Congress has tackled in many years. So we know that. We know that this is going to be not easy to do. But we know, too, that we must get it done. And while we've made important progress over the past week on border security, everyone agrees on both sides that it takes more time. Leader McConnell and I are both more optimistic than before. I think he said something to that effect when he was here a few minutes ago. So, it's not going to be easy, as I said, but we have to do it. We must succeed. Democrats, myself, remain totally committed to working with our Republican counterparts to reach an agreement. Is Murphy here? Yep. So we're going to let Chris go because he's in the negotiations with you guys. Okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Schumer. Listen, I'm very grateful to everyone who's been in the room all throughout the weekend trying to get to a solution. Ultimately, we cannot fail. The fate of the world is at stake. We cannot allow for Vladimir Putin to march into Ukraine and through to Europe. Republicans have made it clear that they are not willing to vote for Ukraine aid unless we come to a compromise solution on border security and immigration reform, and we are hard at work trying to deliver that compromise. We have everyone in the room now that we need. I'm grateful to Senator McConnell for his representation. The administration has been in the room. We worked 24/7 all throughout the weekend, and we are closer than ever before to an agreement. But as I've said to many of you, we need to get this right. There's a reason why Congress hasn't passed major immigration or border reform in 40 years. This is tough to come to a compromise, and it's just as tough to write, to make sure that you get the ideas down onto paper in a way that makes sure that the policy is implemented correctly. We are meeting as we speak, and as soon as I finish my remarks, I'll get back to the negotiating table. And I'm looking forward to having a day and a half off for Christmas with my kids. I'm planning on staying at the negotiating table forever long it takes to get this done. Momentum is heading in the right direction, and I think that will continue over the course of this week.
Thank you, Chris, and I think they'll understand both reasons you're going to leave, because you want to be at the meetings and you don't have to answer any nosy questions. Senator Murray.
That means you want to answer.
That's correct.
I always do.
Look, there's a lot we have to tackle in the coming weeks. The shutdown clock is ticking now, and the war in Ukraine is raging now, and the child care crisis is getting worse. WIC needs to be fully funded and a lot more. So my message to Republicans, if this place is going to work, if we're going to get our jobs done, we have to stand by our word. That means that we're standing by our word when it comes to all of our allies, not treating some like true allies and others like political bargaining chips. It means when we reach agreement, like we did on the debt ceiling deal, we stick to it in its entirety. And instead, House Republicans have been moving backwards to push for new dramatic cuts that will hurt families. Let's be clear, the adjustments to top-line spending in that agreement, adjustments like we make every year, were not some separate, less important thing. Those adjustments made the overall deal possible, and there was no deal without them. You don't get to negotiate how much of your word you're going to keep. This is the very basics of lawmaking. So to avoid a shutdown come January 19th, we need to push the House Republicans to get serious about the deal that they pushed for in the first place, so that we can finally start conferencing and passing bipartisan funding bills. Because the consequences for families back home are certainly serious. We are not going to have a lot of time when we get back to get our security package and full-year funding bills across the finish line. We've got to work together in a bipartisan way if we want to get anything done. So we've got to keep talking to each other and understand that we all need to move quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Reid.
Well, let me echo Senator Murray and Senator Schumer in expressing my strong support for an emergency supplemental request. We have the responsibility to deliver the funding, and it's not out of the goodness of our heart, but for the good of the American people, because it will make America safer and stronger. It will advance key security and humanitarian priorities at home and abroad, and because it reduces the threat of armed conflict from spiraling and spreading. And if that takes place, we will not be sending just resources, we'll be sending young Americans, and I'd rather just send the resources. We know the clock is ticking, and we must act with urgency, both on the supplemental and our year-long appropriations bills. If we do not get a year-long appropriations bill for the Department of Defense, it will be a disaster. The first time we've ever failed to do that. It will jeopardize our troops' welfare, their safety. It will stop key development programs. It will be an impossible situation for our military leadership. Now, 2 weeks ago, the Senate successfully broke the blanket blockade on military promotions, and hundreds of officers finally received their hard-won merit-based promotions. And today, there is still a blanket hold on four-star promotions. We have 11 distinguished officers with a combined 390 years of military service. Some have been nominated as far back as April or May to take top positions. And these positions are critical, including commanders of the 7th Fleet in the Middle East and the 5th Fleet in the Indo-Pacific. Collectively, these 11 officers have won over 250 major awards and commendations from the Purple Heart to the Legion of Merit. They have received their promotions because of the quality of their service and their selfless sacrifice to the nation, and they have to be promoted. I want to commend Leader Schumer for his efforts to clear the way. And we are working to get bipartisan cooperation, and I'm confident these officers will be confirmed with overwhelming bipartisan support. But we're prepared to stay for as long as it takes to get these officers in position to lead our brave soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and guardians. Thank you very much.
Thank you, our great chair of foreign relations. Yes.
Given the very short amount of time, maybe to be 8 legislative days between the time you get back and that first January 19th shutdown deadline. Is there any thought being given to dovetailing that deadline into the February 2nd deadline to allow you more time?
Right. As I said, our negotiators are going to be working very, very diligently over the December and January break period, and our goal is to get something done as soon as we get back. We're going to figure out the best way to get something done. Yes?
Will there be any vote on the supplemental at all during this period this week?
Well, our negotiators are meeting now at 3 o'clock, and I'm going to discuss with them when they finish the best way forward. Yes?
If the supplemental, including border and foreign funding, ends up slipping to next year, given the realities of the appropriations, is it likely that you guys will be successful? Is there even time for
I am much more hopeful today than I was last Thursday. Leader McConnell's people are at the table. The administration's top people are at the table, as are mine and the 3 negotiators, and we've made a lot of progress. This is just a difficult issue, both in coming up with an agreement and then drafting it, because we haven't drafted things like this before. But I'm optimistic that we can get things done when we get back. Our goal is, as soon as we get back, to get something done. Yes.
What is your level of...
Well, I was calling this guy, but then
Leader Schumer, why are you...
he was loud, so I had to call on him.
Why are Democrats negotiating immigration with a Republican Party when Donald Trump is calling immigrants poisoning the blood of the country?
Well, what Donald Trump did and said was despicable, but we do have a problem at the border, and Democrats know we have to help solve that problem, but in keeping with our principles.
What do you say to the folks, though, on your left? Many of them are concerned about the concessions the president is making, saying this is just going back to Trumpian policies. Is the president giving too much?
Yeah, what I said is, look, we all know there's a problem at the border. The president does, Democrats do, and we're going to try to solve that problem consistent with our principles.
Leader
Yes.
Schumer, so as these border talks go forward here, what are the concerns about vulnerable Democratic senators and being hit on this border issue that Democrats aren't serious about border security? Is that an electoral problem?
Well, to show you how serious we are about border security, we're here, and our Republican colleagues who said it's an emergency, most of them aren't. That speaks for itself.
Leader Schumer, on military promotions, do you think that you can get that resolved today? And will there be 22 cloture and final votes, or do you think Senator Tuberville will yield back some votes?
Look, to get these promotions done, we need agreement on both sides, as you know how the Senate works, and we're working very hard to get them. I'm very hopeful we can. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.